Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is India and today we're going to be talking about The Dress Diary of Mrs. Anne Sykes by Kate Strasdin, a book that I was lucky enough to be sent from Vintage Books, so a big thank you goes out to them. The Dress Diary of Mrs. Anne Sykes is about an ordinary woman living in the mid-19th century who kept a dress diary that had over 2,000 fabric clippings in it. One of them was even a pirate flag. They say not to judge a book by its cover, but let's be honest, we all want a book that's nice to look at. What I especially love about this cover is the silhouette on the front. Not only does it remind me of a cameo portrait, which were hugely popular in the 19th century, especially in the period Anne's dress diary was being made, but it's actually taken from Le Follet Courrier de Salon, a very popular fashion magazine of the time, and that image is from the year Anne began her diary in 1838. The attention to detail that's been put into this book is clear, and in its design it does what more books should, utilising the genre as inspiration. One of my favourite things about old books is that they almost always have illustrations in them, but you don't see that so much anymore. It is fitting then for a book about 19th century fashion to have illustrations. At the start of each part of this book there is an illustration from the period, and more can be seen throughout it. It really helps you to immerse yourself in the world of the mid-19th century and makes me think of books from the time. I love learning about the ordinary people from history because I think that learning about them versus, say, the nobility or kings and queens, it really gives us a better idea of what it was like to live in the past. And Anne's story is so fascinating. She goes to Singapore and lives there at one point, and so much about her life is traced and recreated through only a few newspaper articles and the records of her life that were available. And seeing how people lived back then from this intimate view into one person's everyday life, it's just fascinating. And to think that when she was creating her dress diary, she had no idea that all of these years later, so many people would be able to know about it. It is a fascinating book. I absolutely loved reading it. The story of fabric that is told in this book goes all over the world, and there's so many things that I associate with the Victorian era in terms of clothing and fabrics and designs that I got to learn so much more about. The history of calico, for instance, and also how we got the modern sewing machines and how that progressed, and just the world of dressmaking, which is really, really fascinating. In today's age of fast fashion, it was lovely to read this book and learn about how much detail and care went into the selection and making of clothes in Anne's time. While it is nice to be able to scroll through loads of options and have clothes delivered to your door within the week, there is something to be said for the way things were up until relatively recently, when one would save up and carefully choose every detail for a dress. Clothes were treasured and passed down through generations, being made up and altered to fit with the changes in the wearer and fashions. For most people who couldn't afford new clothes very often, each piece was special. I loved reading this book and have learned so much from it. I never knew, for instance, that artificial flowers were even a thing in the 19th century, let alone a popular addition to a bride's hair. This book is a wealth of information for anyone interested in fashion history, and especially what regular people wore in the past. I can see it becoming a great resource for anyone designing period clothes, or simply interested in learning about what is historically accurate for the time. Thank you once again to Vintage Books, and goodbye until next time.